Hello everybody, it's RezenatorZen here with an RSA, a Resonator Service Announcement. My friend asked me yesterday why I didn't like GTA 4, and I had to think about it, and then I came up with it's because it's too realistic. Because that game, GTA 4, in the GTA games you're supposed to suspend belief in those games, where you're supposed to believe that some guy can just go around killing people, not killing, stars go down, he's not seeked by the police. Those kinds of games can't have realism because then people lose touch with reality and think that they can go do those things. But games like COD 4, COD World at War, those are supposed to be realistic because they take place in realistic situations. COD World at War takes place in World War II, and they're telling a story of people who lived during those times and told of real events. But GTA and those kinds of games, you have to suspend disbelief, and you have to suspend disbelief in that. Because you can't say, oh, that's not realistic enough, that's not realistic enough. You can't do that. Because if you make a game too realistic like that, it's going to desensitize people to violence, and then you'll just prove those people right, because then kids will go, oh, I can go out and do this without any repercussions. And they'll do it, get caught, shit like that. You'll just prove those people right with those kinds of games. Because there's been so much turmoil about those games and controversy about those games because of that kind of stuff. Those games don't need to be realistic. COD, World at War, games like those need to be realistic because they are set in a realistic situation. Now, I'm not just going to talk about video games in this regard. I'm going to talk about movies, because movies, when small kids see movies, they need to know what a gun does to a person, really. Most movies that have an audience of young children show people getting shot, but they don't show what actually happens. They just show someone get shot, they fall to the ground, nothing happens. But with children like that, you have to show them the visceral action, like movies like Saving Private Ryan, where those are just visceral, just getting killed and getting torn apart by a gun. That's what really happens in a real life scenario. You have to have that in that kind of movie. And if you have a movie about war that is geared towards children for whatever reason, or if kids need to see that kind of violence with a real person, someone that is actually standing there, that then actually it's not actually getting shot at, but they appear to be getting shot at, then they get blown up with a bullet, or they show the ramifications of getting shot with a gun. They show the consequences of those actions. And movies are where kids go with parents most times. And the parents can explain, this is what actually happens to someone when they get shot by a bullet. With games, those are usually played alone by the children or with people online of their own age or older. And games like GTA should not be falling into the hands of children. As I've said in previous videos, games like that should not be falling into the hands of the children. We need to educate the parents about the rating system, because they're very well versed in the rating system of a movie, but they're not well versed in the ratings of a game industry. There's all these warnings so that parents and people know that this is not for children. There's parental advisory stickers on CDs when there's a lot of swearing. There is the rating system on movies that is R, and proceeding down, PG, PG-13, R, no, not rated. There's those kinds of movies. And then there's the rating system for the games, but the parents don't know the rating system for the games because they've been out of touch with the games for so long that they don't know the rating system, because there was no real rating system with the older games. With the newer games, there are rating systems so that games like this don't get into the hands of children. But you gotta rethink the rating system for movies, because kids are gonna go see movies that are violent. And I think they should go see movies that are violent because it shows them, as I said before, and I know I'm repeating this, because they are going to see the real ramifications of getting shot with a bullet, getting stabbed with a knife, if they're getting shown it very viscerally, very realistically, to true to life. So that way they won't go shoot someone, they won't go stab someone, they won't go do something like that. They won't do that. And as I said, games are where kids play them by themselves or with kids of their other ages that have been somewhat corrupted by games, and they become sort of knotted up in hate-filled orbs, and they just don't let it out. And they become like that, and then that leads to violence. I'm not saying video games lead to violence. I'm saying games in the hands of children might lead to violence. There's no studies on either side that say that. But there's all these warnings everywhere that say this is not for children, this is not for children, this is not for children, this is not for children. Parental advisory, da 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 la 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 la, whatever the fuck. And parents are well versed in that. They know that you don't go buy that for kids, and they usually cave in when they go buy games. But there has to be leaflets or shit like that where they give them to parents and say, this is why a game is rated R, or this is why a game is rated M, AO, T, P, and E. That's why they're rated like this. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You need to know the ratings to be used efficiently. But the point of this video is realism has its place in certain games. Manhunt 2 should maybe not be so realistic with its violence. It should still be rated AO or something when you slice someone's throat and you cut someone's arm and they just start gushing blood. That might really happen, but they exaggerate it to a lot. And games where they don't show a lot of blood, or that they show an overabundance of blood, should be saved for adults. And games that, and they should be realistic games, because Manhunt 2 should be an unrealistic game, and it should be exaggerated to the nth degree, and it should be for people who know the difference between reality and fantasy. That's my main point. Games like Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, those should be realistic because they have to have realism because they're set in realistic atmospheres. You can suspend disbelief in games like Halo 3, and that's what you have to do. You can't make that game too realistic because, I mean, you get a point where a lot of people play Halo 3, but they can play it because it's not as bloody, or it's in the future, so it's supposed to be, you're supposed to suspend disbelief, and that's what this video is about. Is realism, where it needs to be, where it doesn't need to be. Realistic games as opposed to realism needs to be in realistic games. Not realism has to be in non-realistic games. There has to be that differentiation, and unrealistic games should be reserved for children, and realistic games maybe should be reserved for children. For some, if like COD 4 stuff should be reserved for children because they're telling real stories. GTA 4 is not telling a real story of real people, or could tell a real story of real people, but it shouldn't be realistic because people are gonna take it as real. And realism where it needs to be, and parenting where it needs to be. Okay? So the message of this video, realism where it really needs to be in movies and in video games. Realistic situations equals realism. Unrealistic situations does not warrant realistic violence or realistic bloodshed. Unrealistic games and movies don't have unrealistic movies don't have realistic violence. Unrealistic games should not have realistic violence, but should not be able to be given to kids. Peace out. Love you all. Get my message. Peace.